Hello, everybody, and welcome to this, the 13th episode of the Psychology of Lockdown. I am pleased to once again be joined by my friend George Roach, the executive director of the Line International and the Line Canada. And we have been going through the different phases of mystification as outlined by psychoanalyst John Bradshaw. We're on the 13th characteristic now, negative and positive hallucinations. This is getting towards the end of these characteristics of mystification. But I just want to let everybody know, I think we're going to keep this rolling. We've been having such a good time, and the psychological angle is so important for people to understand what's going on in terms of why so many of us seem to have shut down our critical thinking capacities, why people are just going with the mainstream media without really being able to question, even when people who are questioning are censored, clearly being treated abusively, and
Exactly.
and uh, and it's all really boiling down to this psychological problem. I mean, for many years, I think many of us have been trying to explain our perspectives to other people using critical thinking, using logic, using peer-reviewed studies, using science, and just getting shut down over and over and over again. And it's like, what's going on here? Well, that's why this psychological angle is so important. And understanding this concept of mystification, understanding how it comes from our family systems, dysfunctional family systems that have become unfortunately so common because so few of us understand how psychology works. So going through these characteristics of mystification has been awesome. I can't wait to wrap this up with negative and positive hallucinations today, but I do want to let everybody know we've got a lot of other information to throw your way. We've been talking about covering a concept called the rules of dysfunction, which many of you will probably start to recognize. Oh my God, my family has some of these characteristics. This is where these triggers come from. And when people get triggered, then they don't use critical thinking and they don't look at the peer-reviewed science and they only follow the authority figures, and they can't make those choices for themselves. They can't be a fully authentic, individuated human being. It's so commonplace. I think the battleground is on this psychological. It's a psychological warfare, and so we know the military and governments are using psychological warfare on the people. So in order to counter that, we are using psychological healing so that people can be aware of what's going on. They can recognize the psychological warfare when it's happening to them. They can remain untriggered, calm, centered, and using their critical thinking capacity. So thanks for coming back on the show, George. And what have you got to say about negative and positive hallucinations?
Well, thanks for having me, Doug. Well, I mean, they're common. I mean, this is the last
Sure.
stage. You come full circle on mystification because people, when they're mystified, are not totally present. You remember, they're not totally involved in the experiences that they're having. Some people feel like they're riding a bus backwards, watching life as it passes them by. They're not really
Sure.
involved. One's not really involved in what one is doing. So when we speak of negative and positive hallucinations, we're basically talking about a situation where people will agree that they've had these experiences where people are putting words in their mouths. Well, you said, no, no, I didn't. I didn't say that. No, no.
Right.
I think you misheard me. I didn't say any of that. Right. And this is very common. People will swear up and down they heard you say something, and darn well you did not say it. So a classic trait of these hallucinations is actually hearing people say things they didn't say, swearing up and down you heard them say it. The person has no recollection and memory of ever saying such a statement, but you firmly believe it. Very
Mm,
likely that is an audio hallucination somewhere. Maybe you were thinking something. The unconscious mind is busy with mystified people.
right.
Let's face it, that's a busy highway. When people are living unconsciously, hence mystification, there's a lot of material that remains below, underneath the exterior that is still weighing on a person's mind, even when they're sleeping. I've had a lot of mystified people tell me they have a lot of dreams, a lot of bad dreams sometimes, weird dreams of falling and this kind of stuff. So it's very interesting, this hallucination factor about demystified people. The other thing that's fascinating about the mystified person is they project unwanted parts of themselves. Now, I really hope, people who are overweight can deal with. Some people have very, very powerful medical reasons, thyroid issues and whatnot that affects their weight. So some people have a difficult time. Now, I was in the store the other day, and here's a great example of projecting an unwanted part of yourself. This lady was in the aisle with another lady, and they were fighting about her not wearing a mask. And so this debate went on, and I stood there and I just watched and I took it all in. It was in the soup aisle at my local grocery store. And this lady started just, abusing this other woman, calling her fat and
Wow.
ugly, and you're the B word and everything, just, hurling all this shame and disdain at her, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, by calling her fat. So I looked at this woman, and she was larger than the woman with whom she was calling fat.
Huh.
So, I mean, that's definitely an unwanted part of herself, getting hurled at this other woman and exaggerating it as if she had it more in herself. The offender had it in her. Very common in mystification.
Right.
Now, that can go the other way too. We recognize traits in other people that we may recognize in ourselves as positive. If you're a good golfer, and somebody's a good golfer, they say, well, you're really good. That's a great swing you have. Right? Well, he would know he's got that part, but he's acknowledged it in himself and he's accepted it in himself. He can compliment you for having a
Yeah.
sane skill. That's exactly what happens on the negative continuum.
Okay.
Exactly. They recognize that part in themselves that they don't want. See, being a good golfer, you want a good golf swing. Of course you do. You can share that and have a long conversation about how wonderful your golf swing is. You're not going to have a very long conversation about how fat you are with somebody.
Right.
And I
Right.
mean, unless, of course, it's a dietitian or somebody you're working with, a naturopath, to help you improve yourself. And again, this is not a slam on fat people. I could use to lose a few pounds myself. So you're the select lead among the overweight race. I've been sitting at
Right.
home on this computer for a long time here, battling this pandemic.
Well, it's
But
just like we were talking about before, just studying the psychology. It's like so much of it leaks in. You got to think, huh? That's hitting a little too close to home.
okay, so let me exactly.
we all have improvements to undergo. So
Stop,
no
stop.
shaming here. No
No
shaming.
shaming.
Yeah.
No shaming. Please don't feel badly for yourself or
Right.
about yourself. You're all you've got.
Right.
It's very interesting. So many people say to me, on Facebook, I get messages all the time where people are talking to me about this stuff because they've seen some of the other episodes, and they're saying, this kind of thing that takes place where the person, they say, George, people just can't see it. Why can't they see it? It's right
Yeah.
there. You see,
Right.
all the evidence is there. We've all said this to some degree. Or why won't they wake up? A hallmark trait of negative hallucination is not seeing the facts that surround them. These people, there
Sure.
could be a boatload of facts, and they're still believing something contrary.
Yeah, I mean, this sounds like the hallmark characteristic of cognitive dissonance. And then the other thing that has been
Well, no, hang on.
go
Let's
ahead.
not confuse that. I want to make sure that's clear for the listener.
Okay.
No, it's because these people are stuck in the past. You
Mhm.
see, if you're in the past, remember, mystification keeps you arrested development. You're still living in the child mode. It's a child running the show.
Right.
And we got to understand the child mode is about the past. So in this case, when a person can't see the facts that surrounds them currently, it's because their mind, the unconscious, I spoke of this when we were off camera, the unconscious has them rooted in the past. When you're asleep, it's your unconscious mind running the show. That template was determined in childhood, right?
Hmm.
That's the only one you know. Waking up means becoming that adult, that aware, conscious, deliberate,
Right.
accountable, responsible, sensible, vulnerable, and reasonable adult.
Yeah.
That person who's well assembled. Now, since no parenting person is perfect, that's not possible. There's always going to be wounds along the way. So people are mystified to some degree. It's on a continuum. you know?
Sure.
And this is not about intelligence. Some people just get more than other people do. They may not have a degree in anything or, whatever. They're just more plugged into to their environment. They see more readily what's happening. Maybe they were more affirmed and mirrored in childhood. They got more
Hmm.
permission to be who they are. So that voltage of self-connection was increased. See, that's about development, not degrees or knowledge. That's just about human development. So when we see people who are mystified, they've been denied the sustenance, right? And when we do this final episode to kind of bring this thing full circle, how did these 13 episodes of mystification occur? Why did these stages occur? Where I'm in
Yeah.
this trance identity, magical thinking, shame-based self. How did that occur? How did that become me? So we want to, we'll get into the rules of that in our final episode to bring this, culminate all these sections together. How did I have a wounded toddler inside of me, a wounded infant, a wounded preschool, a wounded school ager? And how would I know if I still do? Right? Well, we're going to go through the rules to help people. If you're still parents, we've explained. Right? So part of waking up means breaking some rules. If you like breaking rules, we're going to break some rules. You enjoy
Nice.
breaking rules when you're a kid.
Yeah.
These are good rules to break because they'll keep you in the present day, keep you alive. And it will also help you to determine if you have any unresolved grief to deal with. Remember, a lot of people who are trapped in the past have unresolved grief about what? The past.
Yeah, sure. Sure. And then
You know,
they just repress these emotions instead of working through them.
yeah, we call it baggage.
Yeah. Plenty
We
of
carry
that.
we carry it around
Well,
for
and
decades.
I like this understanding that all of this happens on this continuum because all of us can continue to work on ourselves, right? I mean, and there are different degrees of wakefulness, even or enlightenment. I'm almost starting to go into the Buddhist route, right? I mean, if we can eliminate our past suffering, then we can have enlightenment and live in the present moment.
Well,
We
sir,
all
enlightenment
need to
flows
work
right
on.
out of service, right? Enlightenment flows out of service. You find your bliss, you move into service, and you now are able to enlighten other people. See, once you've done the
Yeah.
work, you can't unlearn it. You can work with people. It's the most human thing to do because therapy means curative treatment. We want to cure things, right? That's what therapeutic means,
Uh-huh.
curative treatment. So when understanding mystification and how it relates to my own life, how does it affect my relationships? The job I work at, the person I choose, et cetera, et cetera. Once we come to understand that stuff, we start to understand what's fully human. And the more fully human I am, the more functioning I am, the less dysfunctioning, of course. Now, I'm not talking about perfectionism here, so don't send me an email about being perfect.
Yeah.
Please reform your mistakes as teachers. You're not the mistake, you make mistakes. That's the big distinction between shame. A guilty person says, I made a mistake. A shame based person says, I am the mistake. There's a
Mhm.
clear error in thinking, a little mistake. Okay. And thought disorders are a very common part of the wounded inner child. So when we talk about negative and positive hallucinations, most of those are born of thinking errors.
Sure.
I don't really like the word disorder, but it's thinking error. Okay. We have a thought error. So, when we're talking about thinking and cognition, we're also talking about seeing those facts. And when we don't see those facts, or we refuse to see those facts, we then become delusional. Remember, Dr. Mark, you and I talked about this
Hmm.
delusional psychosis.
Right.
That when you deviate from reality with content or belief systems uh, to such an extent that you are nowhere near the truth, you are delusional.
Yeah. And this is a
And
negative hallucination.
absolutely,
Yeah.
it ain't positive.
Yeah, right.
That's for sure. Uh,
Well,
they, they so they believe things in spite of what the facts say.
right.
You see, you can show these people evidence about the lockdown, about the impact of the lockdown, about what it's doing to families. We have suicide, we have drug overdoses, we have spousal abuse on the rise. Addiction is increasing like madness because people want to mood alter their shame. would alter their pain. Remember, shame is
Hmm.
painful. You want out of it as quickly as possible. And whatever removes that pain gets your highest priority.
I mean, think about what's even going on in terms of the abusive relationship with the government right now, where they're telling us even if you're asymptomatic, you're likely a disease carrier. Like we're literally getting inundated with subconscious programming constantly through the mainstream media that all of us are have something seriously wrong with us, or we may
Well,
have
who's
something
parenting the
seriously wrong.
country? Who's
Yeah, right,
who's parenting the country? Right
right,
now, it's Prime Minister Trudeau.
yeah. The father
And
figure, the
he's
government,
not a very good parent.
right, and it's an abusive
Things
relationship,
did not go well for him in childhood.
right.
Clearly.
Well, and then the other thing I want to get into, George, is this concept of gaslighting, because someone who's suffering from a negative hallucination will tell you, no, no, this is the truth, or imagine that you said this, or that you have to believe this, uh, and and then they believe what they're telling you, but what they're telling you is getting. I mean, I know those of us who are uh, aware of an alternative perspective about the lockdowns or the vaccines, we'll be showing our information, and then the response is always this kind of like twisted. No, reality is different than this, and it makes it easy for us to start to doubt our own sense of perception when you're dealing with someone with a negative
Well,
hallucinatory
yeah,
perspective.
it's crazy making. It's
Yeah,
crazy making.
exactly.
It's clearly white, and the person is telling you, no, 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 it's black. It's
Right.
black. There's no ambivalence. It's white, but they're saying no, 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 no. So, and I know that's a basic example of gaslighting. When people are not affirmed of their experience, they start to lose. It's like, whoa, I must be crazy. I could have sworn I was feeling sad, but no, what's there to be sad about? There's nothing wrong. You get, wait a minute. I swore I was sad,
Yeah.
or I swore. What are you so happy about? What do we? I could have sworn I was happy. It must be crazy. What you So this marching into somebody's mental space and deciding for them is very crazy making. As a matter of fact, that's how you get set up in
Yeah.
these hallucinations. Because you lose contact with your own mind. It's like somebody else is making decisions for me. They're invading the faculty of my mental space. You see, and that is highly abusive. People don't
Right.
realize you don't have to touch somebody to abuse them. You can talk to them and do this kind of stuff and expect them to follow your belief in this regard. And you do that enough, you've conditioned that person to lose conscious contact with themselves. This is why families who mold their children in the family's image no longer can tell themselves apart from the rest of the family. They've all been raised to behave and be the way the family expects you to be. They do not orchestrate life so that you get to grow up to be who you are. I said
Yeah.
this in a previous episode, but these are all contributors, all contributing factors to why a person becomes mystified and to what degree. See, these rules have been used in different voltages, different intensity levels. So depending on how many kids were in the household, birth order comes out in all of this too. First, second, third, fourth child, for instance. There's lots to be said about how mystification manifests in there. But for the purposes of this episode, what we're talking about here right now, when we're dealing with delusional people, is no matter what you tell them, and again, it relates to the lockdowns, especially because so many people, you can show them the
Mhm.
evidence, and they'll continue to believe anything in spite of what the facts say.
They want to believe so strongly that the abusive father figure, in this case the government, is working for their benefit, that they must be good, despite all of the evidence of the harm that's being caused. And it's so, I think to me, that's the most challenging thing to get through to people is like, the government's not there to protect us. The government, I mean, to me, like one thing that has been becoming painfully obvious to me is that clearly, the upper class has so much control over government, and the government more often, I mean, I think all the time is doing what the lobbyists and the corporations and the very wealthy are manipulating the government into doing, and yet everybody believes the government is doing what it does for our protection. And if you don't believe that, then you're some kind of a crazy person. I mean, this is to me a very clear negative hallucination, and it's just so difficult to get it through to people. Like, here's the mountain of evidence that corporations control the government, and the corporations are controlled by the very wealthy, and yet they just believe that the government cares about them.
There's no critical thinking going on there.
Yeah.
There's no critical thinking.
Well, and then the difficulty is in the communication. I mean, first of all, they're censoring people like you and I, which should be a red flag. I mean, right, in a family situation, if the abusive father figure, you try to speak up and they say shut up, you know, every
Yeah.
time you try to speak, well, that's clearly an abusive behavior, and it's a red flag in any situation. And then again, then the gaslighting. Well, no, you don't think that. You think like I tell you to think. Or you think
Well,
like I
okay, like
imagine everybody thinks.
or like the perfectionistic ideal demands that you think. I
Hmm.
mean, again, you're being molded into the image of what they
Right,
believe. You see, you can't be who you are. And asking questions and critical thinking and all the normal stuff that people should be doing is frowned upon. It's like we're going backwards.
yeah.
Look at that cop that just got suspended for standing up with some of our protesters. He just got suspended
Oh,
for
wow.
telling. So now, what's the new farm of the job prerequisites? Is you got to be corrupt. That's the message. You're going to get suspended for upholding your oath.
Right,
Essentially, that's what happened. Now, that is definitely backwards. So remember, mystification teaches you backward thinking,
right.
backward values. That's
Yeah.
what it does.
I mean, I think that's what I'd like to impart to the audience with today's conversation really, is that when these kinds of red flags come up, these like, that's not. Yeah, because it gets so confusing when the communication is so dysfunctional and someone is suffering from negative hallucinations. And I just want, I hope that people can listen to this and come away with like, okay, I see those red flags, and I'm going to stand firm. I'm not going to allow myself to get engaged or confused when I'm dealing with somebody who's mystified. Um, until we can really get like a very rational kind of linear conversation. And honestly, we need to learn to live in a world where people have differences of opinion too. I mean, we're allowed to have differences of opinion and be different people, and
Sure,
have a diverse, this
but
idea that
let's
one
but let's
one
teach them
person's
what to
belief
talk
should be
about.
everyone's belief is so twisted. Go ahead.
Let's teach them what to talk about, what to focus on. You see, in order to demystify, people must demythologize their parents. We have a bunch of people believe in the government. They need to demythologize our government.
Hmm.
Stop seeing them as these all good doers out to protect you. They're not. They don't care about us. Our premier just closed down all the playgrounds, and then with the backlash he got, he reopened them. How about that for magic? Imminent danger, serious problem. Uh, no one's buying it. No one's buying it, man. If they brought the same determination to the opening of the businesses and the not wearing of PPE, this
Hmm.
unnecessary PPE that's got no efficacy proof behind it, no RCTs or anything. If everybody did that with both those characteristics of this pandemic, this all would be over immediately. People could go back to their normal lives. But as long as they're afraid, believe in this stuff, like they went at it for the parks. No, you're not closing my kids' park staying open. Now, if they brought that same determination to the other characteristics of this, I believe that we would topple the government's narrative and we would return to the very normalcy everybody is seeking.
Hmm.
Not for codependent, wounded, little mystified children who are stuck in the past, who hear things that are not there, and who behave in ways that does not accept the truth. They behave delusionally. So, in our next episode, uh, it will be interesting to show the viewers, to bring to the viewers, the rules that led to all of this. How did I become mystified, asleep, somnambulant? And I, again, use all those terms synonymously. They all generally wind up in the same area.
Hmm.
How did this happen? Well, there's a bunch of rules everyone's been raised on, and nobody has escaped wounding from these rules. They are a direct consequence of mystification. And again, the voltage or degree to which these rules are imposed upon you while you're growing up in childhood is the degree to which you can become mystified. And listen, don't tell me kids are resilient. Nobody has escaped wounding from this. There's no excuse. Don't try to nullify it, minimize it, theorize it, analyze it. Stay with it. If there's any part of mystification creeping into the reality of our offspring, of our children, our greatest natural resource, parents better know it. It all has a consequence. It all impacts some parts of their lives, professionally, personally, relationally, communicationally.
Hmm.
Everything is nailed in mystification for us to be fully functional. So if you don't get your childhood developmental dependency needs met, you better know it and you better know why. And the why is what we're going to talk about in the final episode when we come full circle with the rules of dysfunction that are 200 years out of date, yet people are still using them and they're very much alive and unwell in the circumstances of today because we have a lot of controlling authoritarianism going on, power and control.
Yep, I hear you, George. All the characteristics of a very dysfunctional family happening right now, culture
On a
wide.
grand scale,
Yeah.
on a grand scale. You know, we
Well,
have we have the micro, we have the macro. We got the micro families, you know, little segments of families, and
mhm,
everybody to some degree is experiencing the same crap. Now we have a government that oversees all of those families, and they're the largest dysfunctional family we'll ever see
right.
in this.
Well, I mean,
Corrupt,
it's
dysfunctional, corrupt.
it's just exactly, in the hierarchical patriarchal system where we're all supposed to be working for the government, working for this upper class, these higher ups, and we all get to be the working class, working for them. It makes so much sense, unfortunately, we have to have, I mean, for the government to function, we really have to have like all of these little dysfunctional families. I mean, if families were
Okay,
healthy and strong, then the government wouldn't be able to control us, right?
well, this is it. And remember, corruption is deliberate.
Yeah.
You have to train yourself to believe you literally don't have any problems or any issues. You're not contributing to something really horrible. Actually, you are. And you're doing it knowingly.
Yeah.
Hence why it's a crime. It's not, this is premeditated. It's not, whoops, we're just going to be corrupt. Oh, well, we didn't know we were being corrupt. What do you mean you didn't know? That's why
Yeah,
you're hiding
sure.
everything. That's why you're controlling the media. That's why you're censoring all of our major contributors and professionals and scientists and doctors and nurses. That's why
Right.
you're doing that. Because, whoops, we got it wrong and you got it all right. I mean, this is highly uh, suspicious conduct on the government's part, and they're using it deliberately once again to psychologically condition people into buying into their narrative by spreading all sorts of fear. Toss all the fear you can. You can get everybody to do what you want them to do. Just
Right.
scare the living daylights out of them, and you'll get them to comply. Don't
Triggered.
comply. Say no. If you say yes, you are putting yourself deeper into mystification. You're not waking up. You've got to stand up. You've got to learn what you're dealing with. I have a lot too many people saying, I don't know. I don't know. Whole families are fighting. But you ask somebody, well, where does this information come from? They don't know. They have no evidence to support what they're saying, but they want to be right. They believe they should be heard. But really, what they're doing is spreading all kinds of garbage. And families are fighting about this right now because they don't know how to demystify
Hmm.
through understanding how to demythologize. Very important.
Well, awesome, George. So that's going to wrap it up for our coverage of the characteristics of mystification. Thanks for talking about negative and positive hallucinations. I think just to really drive home for the audience, look for these red flags when somebody is suffering from a negative hallucination. They're trying to impose it on you. They're triggered into this past family trauma. Their wounded inner child is the one that's having the conversation with you, and the communication starts to break down. Things aren't making sense. They're projecting onto you their paradigm of thinking, and they're not allowing you the freedom to express your own feelings. This is unhealthy. They're gaslighting you. Um, again, they're projecting
This is it.
onto
You
you.
got it. You raise a good point there. So let me interject.
Uh-huh.
I'm getting a lot of marriage conflict, right? Somebody from Air Miles just told me the other day that they're getting a lot of people calling them saying, "I'm going to change back to my maiden name,
Hmm.
my
Wow.
Air Miles card."
Yeah.
Right? This is indicative of ending a relationship. The problem with a lot of spouses is they don't realize when they're stressed out and they're afraid, they begin to put their source figures faces on their spousal partners and act toward their partner as if they were an exact carbon copy of their parents.
Hmm.
They don't
Yeah.
realize that they're replaying conflicts with their spouse. It never originated with their spouse,
Right.
but they're treating them like it's dad or it's mom. Got to learn how to detect that stuff. And we're going to show people how to do that in the next episode when we go over the rules of dysfunction. How did this come to be? Right? Because that's another virus, believe me.
Mm-hmm.
And we will be able to put into perspective why people are sinking into those areas, those age regressions. And when we begin to show you the rules that you were raising directly led you into the mystification world, the sleepwalking world, the somnambulists environment, somnambulist ways of doing, seeing, relating, and perceiving the world, born and bred in childhood and inappropriately transferred to the adult environment, hence transference. So, very important to understand these transitions came through the rules. We got to break these rules, and we'll do that in the next episode.
Sounds cool. And again, just to remind the audience, so when you perceive these red flags, understand that we're all working on healing ourselves. We all suffer from these rules of dysfunction that we'll cover in the next episode, and so continue to heal. Have compassion for those who are damaged, but stand firm in your own boundaries, and
And
really,
get help if you're going. Yeah, sorry, Doug. Get help
yeah,
if you're going through this stuff, and you can relate to anything we're talking about here
yeah,
on the show. Like for crying out loud, reach out and get some help. We're in
right,
stressful times right now. The most human thing you can do is ask for help. Don't carry this cross by yourself if you don't have to. Get support. Reach out to people. Let's see if we can reduce casualties by taking action before it gets so bad that we don't have time to respond in our
yeah.
own best interest anymore.
And I think even explaining to others the psychological backdrop to all of this. I mean, we live in a culture that needs help. Like shifting the paradigm from psychological war to psychological healing. Right? We're not in battle with the people that we disagree with. We should be compassionate and actually just try to teach some of the psychological language so that everyone can understand what's going on. Like what's going on is the government is triggering us into our wounded inner child, and we're not thinking for ourselves, and we're just going along with what the abusive authority figure is saying. And the solution is healing. It's not a battle. It's a right. It's like a healthcare situation. We need to create stronger emotional bonds and healthier family units. And so, again, next time we'll cover the rules of dysfunction, which is really going to get to the root of what causes mystification in the first place. And it's probably going to be one of those episodes. I've had a few where it hits a little too close to home. It's like, whoa, yeah,
Well,
I recognize that
I'm glad we
characteristic.
kind of right. I'm glad we kind of saved this for the end because it allows kind of like the nest. These rules are the nest for mystification,
Mm,
and it all sits in there. I'm trying to be non-jargony here, folks. I don't want to start using these big words again and confuse people. But mystification, to be baffled and bewildered, sits in that nest, these rules, this nest of rules that you were nurtured in, like, the roots of your character and your personality came from these rules. Now it's time to break them.
yeah, yeah. Sounds like a plan. Very cool, George. And so we're kind of wrapping up the characteristics of mystification today with negative and positive hallucinations. We're going to talk about the rules of dysfunction in the next episode, and then I'd like to keep having these conversations. I know we have plenty. There's plenty to talk about in the world of psychology and psychological healing. So, for the audience out there, stay tuned. I think we're going to keep this rolling. We're not just going to close it off just because we've gotten to the end of this discussion about mystification. I think the next episode about the rules of dysfunction are going to start to get to the heart of it, and maybe we'll do a few episodes. But George and I will continue to have this conversation and figure out the direction that the show is going to go on into the future. So stay tuned as we continue to produce more content concerning the psychology of lockdown. So thanks again, George, for coming on and talking about negative and positive hallucinations today. And you want to let people know where they can find out more about the line?
Yeah, thanks, Doug. So, yeah, you want to get us at the Line Media Twitter, at the Line Canada on Twitter as well, the Line Canada on Instagram and on Facebook and Telegram. Yeah. If you want to email me any questions or comments, I've received a bunch through some of these episodes. Feel free. Always want to hear your ideas, thoughts, and opinions. Media at thelineinternational.com is where you can share those. That's media at thelineinternational.com.
Sounds good. And I will let you know that I have been your host. My name is Doug McKenty. My full length podcast episodes called The Shift with Doug McKenty, and you can find that at www.theshiftnow.com, along with all of these episodes of the Psychology of Lockdown, another show that George and I are doing Behind the Line, which is more COVID-specific news and information, and other podcasts that I've produced in the past. So there's a lot of good information. That's theshiftnow.com. My personal Facebook page is actually kind of blowing up right now, so you can just look up Doug McKenty on Facebook. I'm also on Telegram at The Shift with Doug McKenty, where I post all my new content. But again, the website, and sign up for the newsletter, and I'll get you all the latest coming out of The Shift, and all the new productions that we're doing every week, including the Psychology of Lockdown as it continues to evolve into the future. All right, George, thanks a lot, man. Hope you have a great
Thanks for
day,
having me, Doug.
and we'll be looking forward to the rules of dysfunction next week.
Thanks again, Doug. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Take care.